Everyone, we promised an update this week again. So much is happening. First thing you'll notice, we got the new Rust NPMs up yesterday evening.
Yep.
So these include a ton of changes on the back end, the peers, the more organized data structure. We call it rectification.
Yep.
We've also got some of the back end functions that are handling NPM, like NFT dividing and recombining. Those are now in the code.
Yep.
What else, Richard?
Well, there's a huge reorg in the code base, the structure, the generation of the WASM, etc., which for any dev who's dealing with it, and particularly if any AI is looking at the code, makes everything way more comprehensible and simple, which is a big win, I think, as well.
Another big thing we should mention as well is for dynamic mod compilation, we've redone the pipeline for that. So there's now actually a command line option to spit out dynamic modules. And it's also important because the JS language that we had in our pipeline before was, I think, limited to 2019. Yeah. And it's upgraded now to 2024. This matters because you can now use the most up-to-date JavaScript code when writing applications. And it's also simplified so that we can continue to update this over time, which is important because AI tends to use more modern code, and we want to make sure that any code that an AI is going to produce is going to run on Saito.
Yeah, so I think we'll have a lot more to say about things like the dynamic module loading and stuff in the coming weeks. But this is really exciting stuff, and there's been a lot of cleanup and rectification to get this working super smoothly.
If you've been waiting for the update, that's why it took us a bit of time, because it's a bunch of it's happening on multiple layers. We got the Rust layer, and we're debugging. We got to make sure that works, and we got the JavaScript layer, and they're interacting. And it's the fact that we were upgrading like the underlying tools that made things a bit more complicated. Because like there's a bug, you want to make sure.
It's a classic chasing things down the stream. You fix a problem, you've got everything lined up beautifully, and that exposes something else that needs to be updated now because you've updated the rest of the stream. So we did it so you don't have to.
It was an unpleasant 2 weeks of debugging, but we've got a lot of stuff out now. Stack image support. I think Web3 pointed out some issues there. Those are fixed. If you've reported bugs, they're probably fixed. If you haven't reported bugs, report them. We haven't tested it yet, but caching should be working better. And if it isn't, it'll be working better in a day or two. So this is, if you share a blog post, it might be slow to load the first time. After that, it will be a lot faster. I mentioned NFT atomize and merge. You're probably not going to be using this yet because it's mostly useful for the store. If you make a big NFT, you want to atomize it before sale, but that functionality is in there.
Yeah. You want to mention the arcade refactor as well?
I'll do that. Why don't you mention admin? It's next on my list. And that's
okay. Yes, it is. So admin's also had a lot of work. We've basically got the developer workflow buttoned up, as well as all of the scripts that underlie that. So the way that your development workflows run with, creating a new JS bundle, deploying it, testing it, is also smoothed out with the link to the admin module.
I was thinking of the admin module and the peer stuff.
I always think of it as from the ops point of view. But yes, there's also features in there to help you manage peers, which not from the dev side, but from the node operator side, will make life a lot easier. And that's also part of the reason for the Rust work that we were talking about before. There's some ongoing stuff there to make that able to be live, which will be fantastic. So you'll be able to see who's connected and then add and remove peers dynamically.
I was just thinking what you were talking about. It wasn't even on my list, but you're right. We also streamlined and we reworked the distro itself. So like a bunch of folders that were kind of scattered, they're all really organized. It's much more pro now. TS is improved. You'll have noticed that there are more people coming and playing that. So we've got a couple of new features there. Dynamic module compilation. We've talked about support for modern TypeScript. Arcade refactor. Big arcade refactor. Hopefully you won't notice. If you do notice, let us know. CSS is updated. It's radically simplified. And there are a couple of reasons we're doing this. One, you're going to see us move towards having teasers for games and applications on the arcade. So it's going to become more of a kind of a UI for installing applications. Some stuff might not be a game there, but it's going to raise visibility. It also is going to allow us to really shrink JavaScript, because right now, any game you see on the arcade is installed by default and given to everyone. And some of our best games are not actually installable because they're too big. So we're going to be able to feature a lot more interesting games to the gamers that are coming, and for everyone. It should improve the arcade. And it should also make it easier for people to realize that Saito is a platform. A lot of people still think about, oh, it's the modules that they've got installed. It doesn't feel real. It's like, no, actually, we're moving towards, here's a Saito file, you drag and drop this in your browser, you've got a new game, you've got a new module. JavaScript really smaller and tighter and faster to load, so the site's going to get more responsive too.
Yeah, I think that's also, we're trialing it with the game-centered UI with Arcade, but that really is the App Store logic as well. That you can have third-party people can publish applications you can use, you can drag and drop them, and then add them to the Saito suite that you choose to use.
Yeah. So that's one of the considerations. The other is that Richard and I are at loggerheads about whether Red Square is the better arcade, or the arcade needs some Red Square features added. Part of the simplification is to make that more possible, to simplifying how things work, standardizing them, so we can bring social media into the arcade, and we can take another stab at Red Square and improve it. So, this is like 2 weeks. It's maybe 2.5. It's an insane amount of stuff that's going live, and we're doing it as setup for the stuff we've talked about. A couple of people, I've heard people say, oh, where's the store? And it's like, Dan's working on that. We're working on that. All of this stuff is being worked on. You can see stuff is being set up for it. The atomize and merge. And we actually need a bit more Rust work for that as well. One fun thing that's going to happen is if you create an NFT, it's going to show up in your wallet like a first-class token, which is critical for gaming, because some of the arcade factors are also unlocking this. If you're creating a game with your own token, you're going to have a waiting room for it, an easy way to make sure all the players have the assets that you're going to be trading in the game.
Yeah, and this is also, it's an entirely new tokenization model in the industry, the bound UTXO model for NFTs. So this will allow for the classic kind of token interactions you're used to, like sending someone a portion of what you have in your wallet without having to do a split or a merge, which I think is crucial to big adoption and being able to just simply and easily issue tokens that can be used for different things in the system, etc.
I'm looking forward to it because I take a look at the way the rest of the space is working, like Pump Fund, and you visit those kind of sites, the ones that are, we're here to show a token, we're going to make it easy for people to create tokens. And what's interesting to me is that they're wrapping social activities around the tokens, but they're not really wrapping around the tokens. They're wrapping around them themselves, the sellers. So like there's a live stream channel or this other thing, and it's, the token itself is totally useless. And on Saito, it's going to be totally different once this stuff launches, because if you create a token, now you get to control access. You can be using it with the scripting language. So all of the features that are being developed are actually useful for token holders. So that's where we're moving towards. That's just technical work. Richard, you've done a lot of outreach in the last 2 weeks too.
Yeah, there's been a huge amount happening. So we've been expanding the team and our capacity. I think people have also been following along will have seen we've been really leaning into the kind of open web and openness narrative, the anti-enshittification movement, because I think there's a bunch of stuff happening that's really making that work for us as a project, and it's helping us get the word out about Saito. So I think it's a combination of people being genuinely annoyed and pissed off about how things are going, being told everything's a subscription, services getting worse and worse. Also, weird
that
things.
Site now needs to confirm how old you are before it can tell you the weather.
Exactly. One government's done that now. Everybody's decided that this is a thing to do, again, with only vague reasons why. So all of that stuff is conspiring to demonstrate to people why peer-to-peer matters, why openness matters, why the core tenets of how Saito is built and what it lets you do, why that's really important. So we're really leaning into that, and we're starting to get really great results. I think people can see that, feel the vibe around the communications, but also people are coming in and getting interested in what we're doing. We've also been practicing and experimenting more with active content, doing more videos, sound, etc. That's been a real winner. And the spaces, we've kind of been doing more spaces, and then we've broken away. What we've found works really well in spaces is when we get quote unquote political, when we take a stand and we talk about things that people care about. And I think one of the reasons we're seeing a great response to that is people are so sick of a Twitter space, which is 6 people take a minute and a half, 2 minutes to shill their project, and then they all answer the same question in kind of rote way. They're really dull. And getting these things to talk about, the one we did last night was about what Wallet first does to adoption, which is something no one's talking about, but something we've taken seriously at Saito since forever. And the fact that these are coming up as topics that are getting air is so good for us as a project. And it feels like right now, with where everybody's prices are and stuff like that, this is a great time to come out swinging and show who we are. So one little call out to people: the spaces I think are really gathering steam. We're chasing some kind of out of industry, some left field guests who I think will be surprising and interesting, and also hopefully introduce a lot more people to what we're doing. But anyone who's got ideas, let us know on Red Square or whatever. Even better, if you have a connect with someone who's outspoken about these topics, let us know. Let us connect with them, because it'd be great to be really turning those spaces into something that is recognized in the industry as like a place where people come to have a real conversation about Web3. So I think stuff is really positive on that front. Feels like we've got some great forward momentum, and do keep subscribing, all that stuff that people say, to get this stuff in front of as many people as possible, because it matters to the success of the project. And I feel like we're starting to really kick some goals. So
I really like seeing the arcade fill up too. We've got a bunch more gaming. You
Well,
haven't learned yes, and you want to be utterly crushed.
David will die on this hill.
I know who these guys are. It's like they're crazy. They are insanely good. Some of these guys. Like, kudos to you if you beat me. By the way, I feel I'm pretty good, and I play some of these guys like, oh my god.
Yeah. Cool. So one last thing is we've got a decent sized little campaign coming up. Something that I think people might not be expecting. Watch this space. I'm hopeful that that'll also be a really nice little win for the project. So we'll announce that next week, which is a little nod that something else is going on. And you should keep an eye on all our socials to see what it is.
And we'll give you another update next week, because we're going to have more by then too. There's a lot of stuff happening. It's nice. Excellent. It kind of feels like there's a lot of stuff that's been cooking under the surface, and it's actually coming out into things that people can see and play with now.
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of things that have come out. Like the Vault and Stack work, I think, was a demonstration of where we see the kind of quality and stuff on applications going. We've had to go and do some groundwork to do the next few pieces of that roadmap, but
the commercial,
the good
stuff, all of that. I mean, the big unknown for us is we don't know quite yet when the store should come out. We're going to be doing an usability review of that stuff all on Monday next week, so we should have a better sense in a week or two to that. It's really about how good it should be when we launch it and all of that stuff.
Yeah, well, it's also easy for us to forget like the amount of work and polish that went into getting the buy processes and stuff really buttoned up. That's working well. We've seen good uptake on those too, and that's obviously part of needing to have a store is having the ability to move and swap tokens around and stuff working well.
I think also taking a look at the NFT overlays, right? Because one of the challenges is if you are splitting and merging NFTs as part of sale, right? But people don't think about this, I think, because if you're on all of these OpenSea platforms, you're selling one photo. Everything is atomized by default.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas on Saito, the user actually has full control over the degree of
you've got and you've got this world where you've got everything between essentially an NFT that is fungible, a multi-unit token that's all that's all the same, through to a singular token, through to something that where you've got a bunch of them and they're not the same. So there's a whole there's a whole lot of use kind of cases there that aren't generally covered. They create amazing stuff for users, but the standard toolkits don't kind of outline how to deal with that.
It's a usability problem, or it's not a problem. It's just like you need to do it, and then you're like, no, this isn't good enough. Let's change it. But you're seeing some of that when you see the Rust level UI happening, and you're seeing the atomize and merge. This work is related to that.
Yep.
With that said, I'd like to get back to work. So
Yes, let's wrap this up. Thanks, everyone, for waiting as long as you did for this update. We'll get you more news next week, and yeah, keep at things.
yeah, have a good weekend.
Thanks, everyone.